We have the pleasure to hear from Jonathan Farrar, who's the CEO of Insight 222, a people analytics strategy organization, and a good friend of mine. So please welcome Jonathan to the stage.
Thank you very much, Ian. Great to see you again and work with you. I think we go back to about 2015, if I remember correctly. Yeah, so quite a long time. Great to be here in Toronto. And great to be having a chance to talk to you a little bit about us, Insight 222, what we do, how we help people analytics teams. We are 100% an organization that focuses on people analytics. We only do people analytics. We sometimes branch a little bit into digital, HR, AI, workforce planning, employee listening. But we think of that always as people analytics. So great to be with you here. And I'm going to talk you through a little bit about, firstly, what Insight 222 is, so just a little bit more depth, and then some research. The question I get asked the most is, what do the best companies in people analytics do to make them the best? And I'm going to reveal that to you today. So let's get into it. All right. I'm hoping that we get some slides up. That might be helpful, but I've got 1 minute. Okay, so got a little bit of background slide. Ian was very nice. I wrote a book back in 2016 called The Power of People. It was all about how to use data to create insights in workforce and create that collective power out of people in the organizations. I had to deliver more value. Ian actually featured in that book. After that, I got asked more and more questions about specifically what do companies do, and get deeper and deeper and deeper. So then I got into a book called Excellence in People Analytics. Now, some of you are very, very hungry people, and you're so hungry. I brought some of these books with me. We had them on our table, which is just right on the first table inside on the right-hand side, and they've all gone. Bar 3. Okay, so I brought them all the way from London. That's London, UK, just to be clear. Okay, if we don't want to get confused with the other London. But I brought them, so I've got 3 left, basically. So we might have some smart question prizes at the end, but we'll see how that one goes. Now I'm working on another book called Value of People Analytics. And this is all about how to move from activities to outcomes and how to change what you do. It's not just about the inputs, i.e. you build some tech, you look after your data, you create some dashboards, you do some data science, and you do some whizzy stuff. But actually, how do you validate that power, that value afterwards? How do you make something out of it? And we talk about different types of things that how value can be defined. And that book is all going to be about how do you move from activity to output, which is really what you're all here for, I think, because you probably get asked this every day, you know, what's in it? How can I get more out of it? How will you deliver more value? What's the impact? You know, if you do something for me, what's it going to do to that stakeholder? What's it going to do to that person? I have a feeling that my slides that I slaved on for at least 48 hours are not going to be shown today. So I'm not 100% sure. So I'm going to do the whole thing without slides, which might be straightforward. So we have basically 3 things that we focus on at Insight 222. Let me just demystify what is the 222, because everyone asks me, Insight 222, what is 222? Any guesses what 222 might be? Not a single guess. Okay. So back in 2016, when we were setting up the firm, 2017, we researched some information from OECD. We were looking at data about people and how much do people work and things like that. And the OECD, which is a study that they do every year on the number of hours that are worked by people in certain countries. In this particular one, there were 37 countries that were discussed and in this study. So 37 countries, and they look at how many hours the average worker works in a year. And that is across full-time employment workers, and it's across contract workforce, and it's across people in different types of business as well, corporates right through to SMEs. And then we looked at that data, and it's about 1,768 hours. And then when you divide that by 8, guess what number you get? 221, actually. But who'd call a firm Insight 221? So I just changed it slightly. But that's it. We help companies improve the value that they get from the 222 days that every one of their employees works in a year. When you take 365 days, take off the weekends, take off federal, state, province holidays, take off sickness, take off absenteeism, things like that, you get to 222 days. So that's what we do. We help organizations, specifically we help people analytics teams build the function that would allow them to get more from the 222 days that every one of their workers works in every year. We do a lot of research as well. These are the 3 books, by the way, that Ian referenced and I just talked about. We do a lot of research as well in the company. We are here both to help clients, but we're also here to build the field up as well. And in our research, we undertake research a couple of times a year, but we study things in the people analytics space. Firstly, we study the people analytics function. Secondly, we study the impact of the people analytics function. So there's some things along here about the people analytics function, the team, the size, the impact, the growth, the scaling, the ability for people to get value out of it. We look at technology, we look at data, we look at vendors, we look at buy-build strategies, we look at skills and things like that. Every year we go out and we research how many discrete people analytics teams we think that there are in the world. Last year we thought there were 1,600 discrete people analytics teams globally. We can do that through LinkedIn. We really look and study people's job titles and where there's clearly a people analytics or similar name. We take that and then we write to those people every year, or the leader of that organization, and say, would you like to take part in our survey? And then we ask about 200 questions of that function, and then we look at all of that data. So we've got quite a lot of information. Sometimes we go deep on topics as well. We've looked at upskilling. We focus on HR business partner upskilling, how to get HR professionals more data literate, and we look at HR leadership teams as well, and we really help them become a little bit more responsible and accountable for the outcomes that you can get. So that's all the things at the bottom. This is the latest 6 research projects, or some of them. Our clients are generally big multinational or big domestic organizations. They're typically brand names that you've heard of. Most of our clients are in Western Europe and North America. No surprise there. There's people analytics starts in basically functions of a certain size, HR functions of a certain size. You've got to be a certain size organization. Typically, if you're over about 10,000 employees or more, we are probably a good fit for you. If you're in the sort of 50,000, we're probably a very, very, very good fit for you in terms of helping you really get more value out of your organization. We have clients here in Toronto as well, and in Quebec. But let's move on to some things. So firstly, if you scan that QR code, you will be taken to the launch page. You should be taken to the launch page that gets you the latest People Analytics Trends report. People Analytics Trends 2024 was published towards the end of last year, and this was our research that I just described, but 348 organizations across 35 countries, including Canada. Yes, quite a few. About 7 or 8 companies in Canada were part of that research as well, and that all together is what I'm going to reveal a little bit of information on, talk a little bit more about just now. So this is called Harnessing Data for Growth. It's the impact of people analytics. It's how to get more value out of it. I'm not going to talk about all of it. You can research that. You can read it. It's a 48-page document. And we've still got some of those left on the table outside as well. And some of you have already picked it up, so I can talk through where some of those good insights are. So let's just move on to the first one. This is what I get asked more than anything. What do the best companies do? In fact, I was at a breakfast this morning with an SVP from one of the big banks here, and his like 10 minutes in, nice conversation, but he said, I'd love to hear, what industries is People Analytics good in? What companies are they? What countries? who's doing what? And he literally said, what are the best doing? It's like, let me talk about that then. So we have this model that we've devised based on 3 years of research on what the best are. And it's quite hard. As a people analytics expert and as a data scientist, it's quite hard. How do you create a model that talks about leading companies when you don't have any leading companies? You're sort of in a circle. You can't say these are the leading companies and then I'll just validate that with some research, because you say, well, there were some assumptions on the leading companies. You can't say these are the factors, because you don't know what the output is that you're looking for. So you're in this circle thing. But when we started this work 3 years ago, there were many people who would say, what is it that X company is doing? What is it that Y company is doing? What is it that Z company is doing? And we gathered all those companies up, because this is what the world perceived to be the best at people analytics. And then we started looking at factors in those companies. We isolated certain factors, and then we started testing and validating those factors as well. And that's how we did it. And it took 3 years to modify that model, 2022, 23, and 24, before we felt confident in having a robust model that really tells us what they are. So a leading company basically does two things. It takes some investment, which is the x-axis, and it creates value. Now, if you do that really, really well, you're up in the top right corner, and if you're very, very well, you're in the top of the top right corner, and that's what we call a leading company. But the factors that we isolated are, there are 4 factors on investment, and there are 4 factors on value. We also then came out with this really snazzy, cool, thing called ABCD teams. It was like we were thinking of doing that whole BCG thing where you go out and call, an owl and a fox, and we just thought no one cares about that stuff. So why don't you just call it what it is? If you're an A team, you're doing really well. If you're a B team, you're doing better. If you're a C team, you're doing less well. And if you're a D team, you're just starting. It's very simple. Let's call it what it is. What we do find is that across the 348 companies that we researched last year, 57% are in D team. So just get an idea. People analytics is generally a very immature function, immature set of activities. And that's because it's not been around for that long. Probably modern day people analytics has been around since 2008, I would say. And yes, you could say historically it's been around since about the 1980s, something like that, around early stages of measuring learning and measuring employee engagement. But modern day analytics, in the way that we think of it as a digital activity, it's been around since 2008. So it's relatively young and immature in that sense. So it's not surprising that many organizations still have D teams, 57%. And A teams is just over 10%. And the rest is split broadly between C and B. If you want a quick thing, what we really try and help people think about through our research and through being a client is, if you're a D team, which most people are, and you want to get to be an A team, don't go through C. Because what that means is you get a load of investment and then you don't show enough of it, and you'll probably be out of a job, you'll be restructured, and the whole thing will collapse. So what we try and get people to do is focus on being a D team to a B team. How do you get more value out of what you've currently got to prove to people that you need more investment, and then you can become an A team? And that's what we aim to do, move from D to B to A. If you're already in C, we try and get you from C to A, but actually what's easier is to go from C to B. Focus some things, streamline, add more value. Less inspection, more value, and then you can get to A. But that's basically the model. Now, what's behind the model? And I'm going to talk about, I'm going to share 8 things. If you want to get more detail on it, go back and look at some of our research. That's the easiest thing, going back at. But I'll talk about 2 of them in particular. These are the 4 things that separate A teams from B, C, or D teams. So the value factors are, firstly, influence. There's descriptions around all of these. So it's not just about generally influencing. There are very specific things that A teams do. For example, an A team people analytics leader will meet with the CEO of the company at least once a year. They'll meet with the CFO of the company at least every quarter. They'll meet with the CHRO of the company every month at least, and so on it goes. We've got very specific things that help. And that's because when you get to that level, when you're talking to those people routinely, you will get to understand the strategic directives of the company, the mission, the business imperatives, and there will be questions asked of, can you help us with those things? And then suddenly your work starts taking on a pattern that those people recognize and things start happening, which comes to number 2, which is business priorities. If you focus on HR priorities, i.e. you're doing an analytics project, to look at the speed of recruitment, then you'll get a certain way. But if you look at a priority that says, we want to look at, what skills we've got of the future, because those skills will help us decide where we're going to put a new manufacturing plant or where we're going to outsource skills to another location because we want to develop a digital whatever product or service. And to do that requires a certain skills, and we need to move the skill mix in the organization. That's a strategic imperative. New product line, new business line, new customers, new location, and so on. And so the more you get to business topics, the more likely you're going to be really successful, the more you stick with HR topics. So question that I would ask you to ask yourselves is, when was the last time you spoke to a manager in the business for at least an hour outside of HR? When was the last time you... Do you want to... Yeah, I'm quite happy to take questions. Yeah, but it's like a rhetorical question. Think about it. If it's more than a month, then it's probably like, am I getting out into the business enough, outside of the boundaries of HR, outside the function of HR? Am I getting outside to hear what managers' frustrations, what their challenges are, what things that they want to get involved in? Similarly, you could ask yourself the question, when was the last time I spoke to an employee in the company about the company outside of HR? So an employee outside of HR. When was the last time you did that? If you hadn't done that in 3 months, then probably, again, you get out there and talk about what's happening in the business. What are the things that are frustrating? How are things developing in the company, and where are we aiming to go? That gets you into business priorities. Skills. Skills is talking about the skills of a people analytics team. What we've worked out with is companies that are A teams have data scientists, behavioral scientists or IOs, and consultants, people analytics consultants in the business. If you've got one of those 3 missing, it's harder to get to be an A team. Ethics, if you've got certain protocols around governance and ethics, which are all described very discreetly, there are very clear messages that you're going to be very successful. Particularly with AI, it's important to have very solid data foundations and councils and governance and stewardship determining what those data foundations are and things like that. So that's that. On this side, measurement. The single biggest factor that will elevate your team to be the best in anything is if you measure the output of that financially. Measure the output of your activities financially. Get a finance person in to help you measure the output. So if you're doing an attrition or retention project, turn it into dollars. Turn the output into dollars. If you're doing a recruitment, something on recruitment or reward or whatever, if you're just doing dashboards, turn the efficiency of dashboards. You're streamlining dashboards, you're putting in a system, you're turning, 100 dashboards into 50 dashboards. Calculate that in dollars. How much cost optimization efficiency have you created? And you do that, and things will happen much more quickly. Democratization, I'm going to come on to in a minute. Personalization is all about how to turn outputs of people analytics into products and services that will actually change the experiences of employees. So are you creating products? Are you putting things in the hands of employees, managers, executives? Are you changing the way that they interact with the organization so that they can actually have a better work balance, they can have better mental health, mental well-being, etc.? Are you moving things forward? Or are your projects, your analytics just landing at the dashboard or hey, I just found out some great prediction or whatever, and then nothing happens? So that's about personalization. Data-driven culture is, have you changed HR to be more data literate? If you have, or if you are on the way, you're more likely to be an A team. But let me talk about this topic, democratization. So Leaky Bucket. Who's on a data democratization project at the moment, in some form? How many of you are on a democratization project of some form, any form? Yeah, probably about 30%, maybe 20%. Who measures adoption? Okay. Who gets scared when adoption doesn't equal democratization? Democratization is, you can define as basically putting analytics in the hands of users, and you can measure how many users you've got, given IDs to and things like that, access to systems, dashboards, products. But adoption is, are they actually using it? Are they using it to make decisions about people on a day-to-day, week-by-week basis? So we did some work on this, and I'm just going to share the results, because this is the depressing side of the work that we do. A lot of the time you work with amazing people doing great things, and it's a growing business, and people analytics has grown like 40% in the last 5 years, and it's all amazing. You go to conferences all over the world, and it's fantastic. And then you do research on 348 companies, and you find stuff like this. And basically, you all love data, but I'm just going to walk you through this, because this is my only chart with anything on. The top line, and forget what's on the right-hand side at the moment, but the top line, the people analytics function, this is a question in the 348. The people analytics function shares data with managers and executives, gone up from 63 to 71%. That's great. 71% of companies of the 348 say that they do that. At my company, there's been investment in specialized technology, about the same. That's great, but broadly 2/3 are spending money on technology. That's fantastic. No problem. Great. One model, probably really happy. But we have a high level of people analytics product technology adoption across HR practitioners. 39% to 47%, gone up 8 points, but 47. And we have a high level of people analytics product technology adoption amongst people outside, amongst leadership outside of HR. 32% decreasing to 28%. So what that means is, on average, across the 348 companies, 71% put data in the hands of other people, yet only 47% of HR practitioners say they use it, and only 28% of leaders outside of HR say they use it, which means there's a 24-point difference for HR practitioners and a 43-point difference for managers and executives, which basically means of the 71% of companies that are doing stuff on democratization, putting technology in place, putting dashboards and reports and products in front of the hands of people, a very large amount of people are not even using it. So that's got to change. I mean, that must change if this function and profession is going to be better in the future. One other, I want to talk about something much more exciting. Schneider Electric is a very large global company headquartered in Paris. Peter Ryan here is the head of people analytics. But I want to talk to you about business priorities. They had a priority that said they wanted to offer fair pay to equal roles. So classic gender parity, or gender pay parity topic. That's how you might say it. But for them, it became like a really important strategic business priority. And what they did was, instead of just measuring it and showing differences and things like that, which they had to do by law, but in certain countries, instead of stopping there, they said, hold on, we want to make this an imperative so that managers and executives, when they're hiring people, when they're promoting people, they can actually know that they are giving fair compensation packages to people of all genders. And so they did all the science behind this. They created what they call the Fair Pay Simulator. So this is where analytics gets really cool. It's got deep data science. It's got very good predictive models on roles by role and by gender. But then they created a tool which allowed them to absorb data, make it more readable on a day by day, so it learned over time. That's the AI side of it. But then they put it in the hands of managers and said, okay, you're hiring that person, so other people in these roles earn this, and this is the amount of money that you should pay this person. They got to the point of being able to get, for every promotion and recruit that they took on board, they got within 1 percentage point between male and female on a fair pay gender parity. It's so good that it won an award at the Data IQ Awards last year as an incredibly innovative socially beneficial piece of HR policy, but it was basically underpinned fully by analytics and AI. That's the sort of thing that companies are doing. That's the sort of thing that I think that we can be doing across all companies all over. We talk, and that brings me on to, we talk about activities to outcomes. When I started researching and looking at analytics, it was all on the left-hand side, dashboards, KPIs, prediction, all this sort of stuff. It's all great, lots of people doing lots of fancy things, it's fantastic. But where we want to get to is more workforce experiences, build a better analytics culture, improve business performance, measure things financially, and have societal benefits like that Fair Pay Simulator. And we come up with this thing called 4 types of analytical outcomes. Again, so they're the same 4 things that were on the last page. But what we did in the recent research is we asked people, are you doing work to measure improving workforce experiences? 63% of companies. Are you doing work to measure how you drive an analytics culture in the organization? 71% of companies said yes. Are you doing work to measure the financial and business performance that you create by doing analytics projects? 41%, and you can see 35% there. So obviously there's still quite a long way to go. You could do the inverse of that and say how many companies aren't measuring anything, but this is what we're looking to try and push forward to. So as a company, we help people deliver more value, enhance their capability, and accelerate their impact. That's our purpose, is to get there. And it'll all be wound up in this book called The Value of People Analytics. If you want to pre-register to get more information of when this book's going to be out, it's going to be out later in the year, around about October-ish time frame. But that's basically what we do. We focus on creating value in people analytics as a team, and thank you very much.
Great presentation, Jonathan. Thank you. Who has questions for Jonathan? I see one over here. We have a mic runner.
So going back to the slide where you had the bar charts, the last row under adoption where we were talking about leaders outside of HR, that's actually the only row that has dropped in 2024. What do you think is driving that?
What do I think is driving that? There is a tremendous focus on people analytics teams focusing on the HR team as their key client, and not focusing on the business leadership as their key client. So I think that's one. I think there is a second aspect that there is a desire for perfect data in this function. And when AI came on board, which came on board at the end of 23, so after we did the research that gave the 32%, there was an even greater focus on AI, and suddenly a lot of organizations went into data foundation mode in overdrive. Like, we must even make more of our data lake, we must get better data infrastructure and things like that. So there was almost even more focus taken away from business value and focused on those things. So I think they're the 2 things. Focus on HR rather than business more, and focus on data foundations at the expense of focusing on outputs. I think that was the 2 things.
Thank you.
We have one here up front.
Jonathan, building on the question that was just asked and what you shared about head of people analytics meeting with CEO ideally at least once a year, CFO quarterly, CHRO once a month. In your experience, for the leading organizations, the A teams, where do they sit within the broader organization?
You mean where does the function organizationally sit?
Yes.
Yeah, so we have quite clear evidence of that. Of the 348 companies, 97% of them sit within the HR function. Okay, but of that 21 of that 97, the person reports directly to the CHRO, and then there's about 50-something% report into that person, so -1. But that's where it sits. There's no, for the A teams, they equally. I mean, it's not like the 3% that don't report into HR or in A teams. No, it's not like that. That's across. So yeah, it's definitely. It's got nothing to do with organization, where it's sitting it's got everything to do with how the people analytics leader determines their stakeholders, who their stakeholders are. Because who you determine your stakeholders to be says who you spend time with. Now, some of that is your decision, like how you go about stakeholder management, but some of it is given to you by your authority that you've got. Some of it is given to you because of the person above you or above them, you know, how much they believe in the credibility that you bring and things like that. But if you deliver more value, that's why we say D to B rather than D to C. If you deliver more value, you're more likely to be, hey, that person's really good, let's bring them into the conversation, and then over time you'll go and have those conversations yourself, you know, things like that. Organizationally, HR.
Great. I think we're at time. If you have questions for Jonathan, elsewise, a break would be a good time. But wonderful prez, Jonathan. Thank you for your time. And let's give Jonathan a round of applause.
Thank you.